All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of SWAC Talk, the show we cover the SWAC inside and out. Of course, I am your tour guide around the SWAC Sea Wells coming at you. And as you can tell, I'm in a much better mood today. I'm in a way better frame of mind. Finally, been able to put that behind me. But it's week 4, so we moving on through the season already. We are coming to the end of September. Um, this week will be the first week of pretty much all SWAC action except for one non-conference game. So we are really starting to ramp up. We're starting to get to go time. And, next month is October, and it's really going to start to be, SWAC football going on conference play-wise. So with all that being said, you can check out the socials as usual. You can see them on the screen. SWAC Talk is Facebook is SWAC Talk, Instagram is SWAC Talk, Twitter is SWAC Talk 76. And if you would love to help the show continue to grow, you can drop a donation off at the Cash App, $SWAC Talk. Also, since you're here, if you haven't done so already, won't you please subscribe to the channel? If you have done so already, thank you. If you have subscribed, then won't you tell somebody else to subscribe, man? We're trying to march on to 1K. Right now, we're in the 700s, so help us grow and grow. Like the video, share them, and hit that notification bell to be alerted to any content that I drop. Tomorrow on SWAC Smoke, I got my boy Jamie G from the No Slack in the SWAC podcast stopping through. He's gonna sit in the guest chair this week, and we're gonna chop it up like we do and have a good time on that. So let's get right to the action, man. We're gonna go ahead and start off with our first game, and that's Texas Southern taking on Texas San Antonio. This is a FBS matchup for TSU. This game is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. on Saturday. UTSA comes into this game at 1-2. They lost the 3 overtime game to Houston 37-35. They beat Army 41-38 in overtime, and they lost to Texas 41-20. So as you can see, they've given up a lot of points. They've scored some points, and they've been to overtime in 2 of their games. So really hectic season for them. Especially coming off of the season they had last year. They're averaging 32 points a game as an offense. Defensively, they're allowing 38.6, so they're giving up a lot of points. They're scoring a lot, but they're giving up a lot. They're averaging 132 yards on the ground. They're giving up 206 on the ground. They're allowing 4.6 yards per carry. They average 3.7 yards per carry. They are passing the ball for 321 yards per game, 86 of 130, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The opponents, 50 of 73, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. They are passing the ball for an average of 223 yards per game. Total offense, 453 yards for the Road Runners. And they're averaging 6.5 yards. They're averaging 5.7 yards per play. The opponent 6.2 yards per play and 430 yards per game. Third down conversions, UTSA is at 56% on the season, and they haven't converted a 4th down. The opponents are also at 50% on third down conversions and 80% on 4th down. So they're having a lot of problems getting stops on defense. They're just kind of almost content to just go up and down with you. And whatever happens. They fumbled twice. They haven't lost any. The opponents have fumbled 4 times and lost 3. They have 5 sacks on the season, and the opponents have 8. Looking at some of the individual guys to look out for, Brendan Brady is the leading rusher. He has 157 yards on the season. He's averaging 3.4 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. Frank Harris, 26 carries, 131 yards. He's averaging 5 yards per carry and a touchdown. Frank Harris is also the quarterback. He was quarterback wearing number 0. That's the first time I've seen that. Now, I'm not saying, I could point me to another quarterback wearing number 0. That's kind of funny to me. I mean, other guys with 0, never saw quarterback wear 0, but that's neither here nor there. One interesting fact, this team, both their the 2 leading rushers are quarterbacks. So their run game is not that great. Traylon Smith is the leading rusher as a running back. He has 82 yards on the season and a touchdown. So they are getting a pure dual threat. Let me revamp that. I'm sorry. One guy, he's a running back. he threw a pass, so I had to look at his position. So, okay, Brendan Brady is the leading rusher. He's the running back. Frank Harris is the quarterback. He has 84 completions, 123 attempts, 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He's completing 68% of his passes. His top target on the season is Zachary Franklin with 26 catches for 306 yards, averaging 11.7 yards per catch and 3 touchdowns. Joshua Cephas, he has 24 catches for 298 yards, 12.4 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. DeCorian Clark is the leading guy in terms of touchdowns. He has 3, and he also has 18 receptions for 200 yards, also 11.1 yards per catch. After that, everybody else is in single digits. So those are the 3 guys that they really look to throw to when they take to the air. Trevor Hammonson is their leading tackler with 22. Jamal Ligon also has 22, and Clifford Chapman has 20 tackles. Tackle for loss, Hammonson, he has 3.5, and the leading sack man right now is Brandon Brown with 1.5, and they don't have an interception on the season yet. Looking at the special teams, nothing of note really in the return game. Their punter right now is averaging 41 yards per punt. He has a long of 58. So, that he has a pretty solid leg. And field goals, they 4-6 on field goals on the season with a long of 39 and 0 for 2 from 40 plus. So their range pretty much seems to be inside of 40 yards. And that's, this team, they've been content to score a lot of points. Texas Southern coming off of a big victory over Southern this week. They're averaging 24 points a game, and they're giving up 33. The defense played a really good game against Southern. Hopefully they can build on that. I really wish that they had a SWAC game or another FCS game scheduled this week, because I would love to see them keep that momentum going from last week. Stepping out into an FBS game coming off of a big game like that, to me, is counterproductive. I mean, you can't control, the schedule. You got to play who they put on your schedule. But, I would have loved to see them come off of that game and go into another game with that momentum and seeing where that takes them. Rushing the offense, they're 167 yards per game, 3.9 yards per carry. The opponents 313 on the ground, 6.2 yards per carry. Texas Southern is 42 of 63 passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. The opponents 33 of 62 passing, 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 143 yards per game. Total offense 327 yards per game for the Tigers. They're averaging 5 yards per play. The opponents average 6.4 yards per play, 457 yards of offense. Texas Southern is 35% third down completion rate and 33% on 4th down. They fumbled twice and lost both of them. They have 4 sacks on the season. They've allowed 7 sacks on the season. The opponents have fumbled once and lost it. The opponents are converting 39% on 3rd downs and 16% on 4th downs. So they're doing a pretty decent job of getting stops. The first couple of games, they kind of got woe down, and they just couldn't keep up offensively. Ladarius Owens is the leading rusher right now with 160 yards on the season, averaging 5.2 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. Ja'Cory Howard, 114 yards, 4.2 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. Andrew Body, 107 yards and 3.3 yards per carry. Right now, their longest rusher on the season is 39 by Owens. So not really explosive with the run game, but they can strike, and they have ability. Those backs can get it done. And Body is a guy that's very capable as a runner. Passing, Body is 42 of 68, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's completing 61% of his passes, 479 yards, has a long of 53. The leading receiver is Derek Morton, 13 catches, 233 yards. He's averaging 17 yards per catch and 1 touchdown. He had that 53-yard touchdown last week. A.J. Bennett, 6 catches, 84 yards, 2 touchdowns. Trenton Leary, 3 catches, 43 yards, 14 yards per catch. So, they kind of spread the ball around, but Morton is shaping up to be the guy that they want to go to, and he's a guy who can get loose. So you definitely want to keep an eye on him. Jacob Williams is the leading tackler with 25. D. Anderson, 23. Tariq Cooper, 15. Tackles for loss. Akins, 3.5. Had a really good game this past weekend. Sacks. Akins also leads the team with 2 sacks. interceptions. Isaiah Hamilton with 2, and they have a few other guys with 1 apiece. Special teams, Rick Garcia was a big plus. He was a specialist of the week. He's really solid punting. He's averaging 41.5 yards per punt with a long of 57. He's also 2 of 3 on field goals. His long on the season right now is 39. The return game right now, nobody's really broken out. Lewis is averaging 22 yards per return. He had a big return against Prairie View to open up that game, but they are kind of shaping up to have a pretty solid return game. This game is, I think a lot of points will be scored in this game. I feel like UTSA has the numbers advantage and the depth advantage. So I think at some point, even if this game starts close, I think they'll win this game strictly by numbers. I think TSU is gonna put up some points, but I think the UTSA offense is probably gonna score a lot of points themselves. So I'm looking at a score of 52-20. Like I said, I just really wish that TSU had a SWAC game or just another FCS game this week, because I think that this team could really get on a roll, if they were able to keep their momentum going. Now, that's not to say that, this team, some kind of way, they can pull this out the hat. But, I just really wish that they had that game that they can just kind of flow into momentum-wise and keep growing. So I feel it's a big thing for Texas Southern throughout the season. So, don't count these guys out. Obviously, they have the attention of everybody coming off of this week, and they will have that throughout the rest of the season. Moving on to our next game, which will be the first SWAC game we talk about this week, and that's Mississippi Valley at Jackson State. At some point in the season, or in the preseason, some people said that this was a game that could be a surprise game for Jackson State, but I never really felt that way. But Valley has not played Valley football this season, especially. Well, they haven't played the Valley football that people expected them to play. The offense hasn't really been a threat. Defensively, they have some guys, that can make some plays, but they just are on the field too long. They're just not consistently able to move the football. The passing game has really not been flourishing. And that's why they're sitting at 0-3 with a loss to Delta State this past weekend, where they were down 18-0 at the half. So this team needs to find a way to get things going, and this is a tough week for that to happen. Right now, Valley's averaging 10 points a game, so offensively they're not really scoring. They're giving up 32 points per game. They average 136 yards per carry. 136 yards per game, rushing 3.5 yards per carry. They're giving up 162 on the ground, 4.2 yards per carry. They are passing the ball for 112 yards per game. They have 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, 39 of 85. The opponents average 309 yards per game passing, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception, 69 of 107. Total offense, Valley 248 per game, 3.7 yards per play. The opponents 471 yards per game and 6.3 yards per play. Valley's converting 34% on third downs and 71% on fourth downs. They fumbled twice and lost 1. They have 9 sacks on the season, so they have been getting good pressure with their defensive front. The opponents are converting 46% on third down and 50% on fourth down. They have 1 fumble and they haven't lost it. And the opponents have 10 sacks the opponents have 7 sacks on the season, so pretty even in that respect. Caleb Johnson is the leading rusher right now. He has 166 yards, averaging 3.3 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Jacoby Thomas, 114 yards, 4.6 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Right now, the passing game is where the sticking point is for this offense to me. Jamari Jones came in last week and had a good game. He's 17-25 for 182 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. He's completing 68% of his passes. Jelani Eason, 19-45, 42% completion rate, 138 yards, and two interceptions, no touchdowns. So I'm leaning for Jones to be the guy. I think Eason's had his chance. I think he's a guy that, can do some things for you, but his offense needs a spark. And I think Jones is the guy that gives that to you. Rankin is the leading receiver with 9 catches for 77 yards, 8.5 yards per catch. Donald Johnson, 4 catches, 68 yards. He's averaging 17 yards a catch. D'Angelo Wagner, 5 catches, 43 yards. Sylvester Campbell, 5 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown. He's averaging 8.2 yards per catch. So you see, they don't really throw any long passes or even intermediate passes. Everything's short. All of their guys, except for one, averages under 10 yards per catch. So they, throw it out in the flat, a lot of slants and stuff. They don't really strike you deep. So they need to find a way to get this passing game going and becoming a more potent attack through the air to open up the ground game, because everybody knows you want to run now, and your quarterbacks run. So teams are aware of your run game. You need to find some kind of way to pass to open it up. And you're gonna be busy on the ground this week because your quarterbacks are gonna be under a lot of pressure. Ronnie Thomas is having a really good season for Valley. He's a leading tackler with 23. He leads the team with 8.5 tackles for loss, and he leads the team with 5 sacks. He's having an all-conference season. If he keeps this up, he's gonna be a first-team all-conference guy. If he was putting up numbers like this on a team that was winning, he would be a contender for Player of the Year with these numbers early. He's putting up solid numbers on a defense that's kind of struggling, but he's the guy right now, and you need to know where he's at all times. The leading interceptor is Caleb Alexander. He has the only interception on the season. Orlando Fernandez is the kicker and the punter. He's averaging 42 yards per punt on the season with a long of 67, and he's 1 for 2 on field goals. One inside of 29 yards, and he's 0 for 1 30 yards plus. So not a lot of opportunities to score. Not a lot of points put on the board for Valley, and that's going to be probably the sticking point of this team moving forward. And this game here is a tough game for them. They're facing the Jackson State offense that's averaging 47 points per game. The defense is giving up 10. The bulk of those points came against Grambling. Grambling just really was able to, strike a couple big plays. They scored 2 70-plus yard touchdowns and a scoop and score. So they had some explosive type plays, but moving the ball, it was still tough. Jackson State running game really took off in the game Saturday. Savion Wilkerson had a huge game on the ground, 2 touchdowns. So, he's a guy who a lot of people expected to flourish, and he really flashed big time in that game. And I expect him to continue to get those carries for this offense. Right now, Jackson State's averaging 158 yards per game, 4.2 yards per carry. The opponents average 47 yards per game rushing, 1.6 yards per carry. 78 of those 142 yards came on one run against Grambling, so they don't give up any yardage on the ground outside of that one play. Passing, 340 yards per game for Jackson State, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, 86 of 118. The opponents, 35 of 91, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions, 127 yards per game. Total offense, 499 yards per game for Jackson State, 6.5 yards per play. The opponents, 175 yards per game, 2.9 yards per play. Third downs, Jackson State 42%, 66% on fourth down. The opponents, 20% on third downs and 28% on fourth downs. Jackson State has fumbled 8 times and lost 5, so that's been probably the one thing that you can point to on this team and say that they're not really up to par. Is taking care of the football in terms of fumbles. That's been an issue this season. If you want to pick anything as an issue, that would be the one thing you look at, but that hasn't impacted them at all. The opponents have fumbled 5 times and lost 4. 14 sacks on the season for Jackson State. The opponents have 6 sacks. So the offensive line for Jackson State has been a lot better protecting the quarterback. And, of course, the defense is getting out to the quarterback as usual. Wilkerson is the leading rusher with 227 yards per game. 227 yards on the season, 90 yards per game, 5.8 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely has busted out. He has 47 carries and that's the most on the team right now. So I expect him to continue to carry that load. Shedeur Sanders, 81 of 111, 72% completion rate, 956 yards, 10 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He's on a tear right now. Dallas Daniels and Shane Hooks each have 18 catches. Daniels has 230 yards. Hooks 182 yards. Daniels 4 touchdowns. Hooks 2 touchdowns. Willie Gaines has 5 catches for 165 yards. That's 33 yards per catch. So he's definitely going down the field and getting it. He has 2 touchdowns. Kevin Coleman 8 catches, 85 yards. DJ Stevens 8 catches, 75 yards. Cameron Buckley, 6 catches, 50 yards. Malachi Wideman, 2 catches, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Defensively, Aubrey Miller is the guy. And that's probably going to be your conference player of the year. He's a monster, man. He's a head buster, and he's been he's everywhere. I mean, you see him running down guys on screens. You see him, getting in the backfield. You see him, he's a hitter. He has 21 tackles on the season. Silman Craig, 17. John Huggins, 13. Niles Gaddy, 11. Gaddy leads the team with 5 tackles for loss. Jarente Davis, 3.5. Justin Reagan, who's having a good season, 3.5 tackles for loss. Huggins, 2 tackles for loss. Bowden, 1.5. Gaddy leads the team with 4.5 sacks. Huggins, 1.5. Davis, Reagan, Silman Craig, Arrington, Devontae Davis, Mercier, Antonio Doyle, and Jeremiah Williams each have 1 sack apiece. Interceptions are by Silman Craig, Wiggins, Beasley, and Salgado. So they have guys, a bunch of guys doing things. The special teams have not been spectacular, but Alejandro Mata is 5 of 6 on field goals. He has a longer 36. Sam Johnson is the punter. He's averaging 38 yards per punt with a longer 44. They've only punted 7 times, so you don't really expect a lot out of a punting unit that doesn't punt that much. Kevin Coleman's averaging 8.6 yards per punt return, and Isaiah Bolden right now is averaging 25 yards per kickoff return. He has a longer 45 so far this season. You can expect him to probably bust out at some point and really break one at some point this season. This game is really simple. Valley, they're just they're just not in a good place right now. This is a tough game for them. Jackson State just has to not make any mistakes. Those self-inflicted mistakes, those fumbles and things like that, and just continue to do what you do. Move the football, play solid defense, and you'll take care of business in this game. Valley just really has to continue to try to get themselves going this season. A lot of people had high hopes for them, and right now it's not really looking the best. So they have to regroup and get going again. Like I said, tough game for them this week. I like Jackson State 55-6. I think Jackson State will get up early and kind of have their way in this one. Valley will have to kind of go back to the drawing board and try to refine themselves because they are they're just not looking the way we thought they would right now. Grambling is at Bethune Cookman. Grambling's coming off of a game, like I said, against Jackson State where they scored 24 points, 3 big touchdowns, 2 long offensive touchdowns, and a defensive touchdown. So, and they were able to at times move the ball against Jackson State, just not consistently. They're still trying to find out who they are. Some people are, up in arms about Hugh Jackson right now. Like, why? It's his 3rd game. I mean, you won 1 game, scored 40 points in that game. You scored the most points against Jackson State that anybody scored this season. You busted 2 big plays. The foundation is there. You got to give this team a chance to gel. This is a team coming in with no real quarterback, offensive line. Has some issues from last season. You bring in all new skilled guys. Defensively, you're bringing in a lot of new guys. This team is not in bad shape. With coming out of 1 FBS game and 2 FCS games, you're 1-2. That's pretty much probably where you were going to be anyway. So I don't really get that right now. The season, has to continue, and there's going to be some growing pains and some ups and downs, but I just don't see any cause for concern right now. Gramblin's averaging 24 points per game. They're allowing 48. They have allowed 230 yards on the ground, 4.9 yards per carry. They're averaging 103 yards per game rushing, 3.8 yards per carry. Now that can be an issue, but like I said, you played one of the best defenses in the FCS, and you play the FBS team who really controlled you. But you've had big plays, and now it's time to take those big plays and put them into drives, chunk plays, consistently moving the football. That's going to come. Being able to have guys that can bust those plays is great, but this team is going to make their way by continuing to move the ball consistently, especially on the ground. Right now, they've run the ball 81 times this season. They're 30 of 76 passing, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, averaging 155 yards per game. The opponent 72 of 110, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. They're averaging 304 yards per game passing. Total offense, Grambling 4.9 yards per play, 258 yards per game. The opponent's 535 yards per game, 6.4 yards per play. Third downs, Grambling 18%. Some of these numbers do have to get better, and they will as the season goes on. But right now, Grambling 18% third down, fourth down 66%. The opponent's 39% on third downs and 58% on fourth downs. Grambling's fumbled 7 times and lost 3. The opponent's 7 fumbles and lost 5. Grambling has 6 sacks on the season, and they've given up 5. Individually, their leading rusher right now is Maurice Washington. He had that big 78-yard touchdown against, or 73-yard touchdown against Jackson State. 174 yards on the ground this season. 15.8 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. I heard he was having some issues with the heat on Saturday, so he didn't really get as many carries as he probably should. But that's a guy you want to get the ball in his hands. I mean, obviously, 15 yards per carry on 11 carries is a solid number. He's a guy who's a threat to break it. He already has 3 touchdowns. Chance Williams is a young guy, 22 carries on the season, 70 yards, rushing 3.2 yards per carry and 1 touchdown. That's a 1-2 punch. A young guy, a big and a little bit older guy. Between those 2 guys, your running game should be in good hands. Terrius Hawkins, 28 of 60 passing, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 462 yards. Right now, he's completing 46% of his passes. That's a number that I really would love to see get better. And like I said, some of these things will improve with the reps, the in-game reps. Being able to actually be the guy to go out there and make plays and being trusted to get the ball out to your guys is gonna only help you get better. Lyndon Rash right now has 7 catches for 195 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had an 83-yard touchdown on Saturday. Chance Williams, 5 catches, 118 yards. He's averaging 23 yards per catch. Rash, 27 yards per catch. Williams has a 78-yard catch. J.R. Waters, 5 catches, 99 yards, 19.8 yards per catch, 1 touchdown. He has a 71-yard catch. So as you can see, the majority of the only other 2 guys that have any major yardage in receiving it are Washington with 36 yards and Coleman with 20. So everybody else has either 3 or minus yardage in reception. So right now they don't have that drive. They don't have that consistent move the ball offense yet. They have that big play offense that can strike and hit that explosive play and get that quick touchdown, but they haven't been able to successfully drive the ball down the field. And this is going to be important in a game like this to be able to move the ball on consistent drives and give your defense a chance to rest and just get that confidence and momentum in your offense to be able to move the ball, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 10 yards, 15. Just really being able to be a consistent offense that comes with time. And, now that they're kind of finding who their guys are, you're going to see that offense start to develop like that. Lewis Matthews right now is a tackling machine. 32 tackles on the season, 5 tackles for loss. You definitely need to know what number 57 is at all times. Joshua Quiet has 18 tackles. Josh Reed, 18 tackles. Sundiata Anderson has 3.5 tackles for loss. Brian Powell has 3 tackles for loss and a touchdown on a scoop and score. Powell and Anderson both lead the team with 2 sacks apiece. Interceptions are by Thomas and Lee. And like I said, Powell had that fumble return for a touchdown. Special teams, Jimmy Isles, 22 punts, 869 yards, averaging 39.5 yards per punt, has a long of 52. Garrett Urban is 2 of 2 on the season right now. He has a long of 41. Right now in the return game, nobody's really standing out that much. Britain right now is averaging 27 yards per return on 3 returns. Washington 17 on 8 returns. So nobody's really busted out yet, but you can expect that to come down the line because they have athletes and they have some guys who can do it if they get the ball in their hands. Right now, Bethune Cookman is 0-2 coming off of a bye week last week. Their offense has not been really consistent at all. They're averaging 11 points per game. They had an FBS game and a game against South Carolina State, so not a lot of success offensively. 11 points per game, giving up 51.6 points per game. The opponents are averaging 6.4 yards per carry and 271 yards per game on the ground. The Wildcats 142 yards per game, rushing 4.6 yards per carry. Right now, they have 1 rushing touchdown. Opponents have 9. Passing 27 of 61 for Bethune Cookman, 1 touchdown, 7 interceptions, 218 yards per game. The turnover bug is still there. They have yet to find that guy at quarterback who can really get this offense going. Opponents 27 of 40, 229 yards per game, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Total offense 360 yards per game for Bethune Cookman, 5.9 yards per play. The opponents 491 yards, 7.9 yards per play. Third down, Bethune Cookman's 29% third down conversion rate. They are 100% on 4th down, 2 or 2. The opponents are 61% on third downs and 33% on 4th down. They are not getting stops on defense, and they are not converting on offense. And that's a recipe for disaster, especially against, similar teams. Right now, you're just not able to move the ball. That first half against South Carolina State was not pretty. They played 3 quarterbacks in that first half, and, not a lot really came out of it. They have to find something to get this team going. They have 2 fumbles, haven't lost any. The opponents fumbled once and lost it. They have 3 sacks on the season. The opponents have 6. The leading rusher right now is Jalen Jones. He has 18 carries for 102 yards. Quayshawn Bird, 15 carries, 75 yards. Jones averaging 5.7 yards per carry. Bird, 5 yards per carry. Tyrone Franklin, 6 carries, 42 yards. He's averaging 7 yards per carry. Not a lot in the run game. Jalen Jones right now is the leading passer, 19 of 43, 370 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. He's completed 44% of his passes. Walter Simmons came in last week and had a pretty solid couple drives against South Carolina State. He's 5 of 6 on the season, 48 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Tyrone Franklin, 3 of 12, 25%, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has 19 yards. So the passing game is just not there. Your big guy Everett right now is only sitting at 2 catches for 1 yard. That has to change. You need to force feed him the ball. You need to find ways to get him open and get the ball to him. That's your playmaker. You need to really put the ball in his hands. I mean, this is probably one of the top tight ends in the nation. He needs to touch the ball. Dylan Lee right now leads the team with 7 catches for 112 yards. Darryl Powell, 4 catches, 111 yards, 27 yards per catch. So he's been a guy that's been able to make some things happen. Marcus Riley, 3 catches for 87 yards. He's averaging 29 yards per catch. Just not a lot of consistency in his offense. And these offenses, I don't want to say they mirror each other, but they're similar. Neither one of these teams have really had that consistent game yet. Even against Northwestern State, Gramblin's offense was more of a quick play, big play offense in that game. I think the team who drives the ball consistently in this game is going to win this game. Demetrius Hudson leads Bethune Cookman with 13 tackles. Devontre Hampton, 12. Amory Jones, 12. Tackle for loss, McKenzie with 2. Sacks, 1.5 for Pearson. No interceptions on the season right now. Lennon is the punter. He's averaging 36 yards per punt. He has a longer 47. Mogadam is the field goal kicker. He's 3 of 4 on the season. 1 of 1 inside 20 yards, 1 of 1, 20 to 29 yards. 0 for 1 from 30 to 39 yards. He does have a 41-yarder on the season. He's 1 for 1 from 40 plus. Right now in the return game, Darnell Dees he's a big play guy. He hasn't busted loose yet, but he has 4 returns for 82 yards. Right now 28.5 yards per game average. So, like I said, this is a game I think that the team who can consistently move the football and control the ball is going to be the team that wins this game. I think, I think Grambling, to me, is the better team in this game now. We see on paper that being a better team does not mean you're going to win that game all the time. But in a game like this, I think Grambling's offense, if they can continue to, hit those big plays, but be able to put together some drives, I like Grambling because I like their defense better. They have playmakers on their defense, Matthews and Anderson, Powell. Those guys are guys that are gonna be game changers. Bethune Cookman right now, they don't really have that. So that's what really makes me feel more comfortable with picking Grambling. And I think Grambling's gonna be one of those teams that gets better as the season goes on. I mean, opening up with an FBS matchup and Jackson State, those are 2 tough games to open up your season. So, it's not gonna get any harder after this point, so you'll be able to start, putting things together. So I like Grambling in this game by a score of 27-17. I just don't see the consistency for Bethune Cookman on either side of the ball yet that will make me feel like this team can get it done. So I'm leaning Grambling in that aspect. The next game we're gonna have is Prairie View at Alabama State. I picked this game for my game of the week because there really weren't any big marquee matchups this week. But I think this can be a good game. I think this is going to be if you like defense, I think this is going to be a game where the defense on both sides control this game. I think it's going to be a physical game. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. I think this is just going to be one of those matchups that if you like that kind of physical ball, I think you're going to get what you asked for. Alabama State right now is 2-1 on the season. They had a big win in the MEAC Challenge. They beat Miles and they lost to UCLA in their last game, and they're coming off of a bye week. Prairie View is also 2-1. That's not right now. Prairie View is y'all got a Prairie View is 1-2 right now because they lost to Abilene Christian, didn't they? So for some reason they're showing that they beat Abilene Christian on their schedule. But they're 1-2 right now, coming off of a loss to Abilene Christian and a loss to Incarnate Word. But Prairie View right now is playing really solid defense. The offense has been hit or miss. You really don't really know. The passing game hasn't really been there like you really want it to be. The run game has been pretty solid. They've been leaning hard on the run game. The pass game hasn't really broke out yet. So hopefully, the run game can find a way to continue to carry this team, and the passing game can get better and more consistent, because they did throw the ball pretty well against Abilene Christian. They didn't throw the ball well at all against Texas Southern. They didn't really need to. And they didn't really throw the ball that well against Incarnate Word. Right now, they're averaging 28 points per game. The opponent's 22. They're rushing for 258 yards per game, 5.3 yards per carry, 4.1 yards per carry for the opponents, 162 yards per game. Passing offense per every 40 of 71, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 117 yards per game, 132 yards per game passing for the opponents. 45 of 80, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Prairie View's averaging 5.2 yards per play, total offense, 375 yards per game. The opponents, 294 yards per game, 4.4 yards per play. Prairie View has 44% third down conversion rate. The opponents 40%, 40% on fourth downs for both Prairie View and their opponents, 2 of 5 each. Both teams, Prairie View and their opponents, have both fumbled 4 times. They both lost 3. Prairie View has 13 sacks on the season, so their defense is right up there. In terms of sacks, they're right at the top. Their defensive line is getting good pressure. Their linebackers are playing well. The secondary is covering pretty well. The opponents have 8 sacks on the season, so they're not doing a great job of protecting, but they have been making some things happen with their with their run game. All right, right now their leading rusher on the season is Amar Antoine. He has 37 carries for 213 yards. He's averaging 5.8 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. Trezon Connolly, 9 carries, 121 yards. He's averaging 13.4 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. Jaden Stewart, 22 carries, 119 yards, 5.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Passing right now, they don't really have that guy. Man, that box, this stat sheet is all messed up. Trezon Connolly right now it is being shown as 2 for 7. Well, right now this Prairie stat sheet is just all messed up. CJ Dumas, Chris Herron, and Connolly have been the guys who have played quarterback. Connolly got the first 2 starts, and Herron and Dumas, they played in the last game. So, like I keep saying, if Prairie View can move the ball through the air, I think they'll be able to control this game, because I think their run game is very good, and their defense right now is probably one of the better defenses in the league at this point. I expect Prairie View to really come out and challenge Alabama State. Like I said, I think it's going to be a physical game. Bama State right now, they're averaging 17 points per game. They're giving up 23. They're running the ball for 105 yards per game, 155 for the opponents, 3.2 yards per carry for the Hornets, 4.1 yards per carry for the opponents. Alabama State, 229 yards through the air per game, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 170 yards per game for the opponents, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 334 yards of total offense for the Hornets, 5.7 yards per play, 326 yards per game for the opponents, 4.7 yards per play. Third downs, 16 of 40 for Alabama State for 40%, 50% on third down. On fourth downs, they fumbled 9 times and lost 7. So ball security is a big issue for the Hornets. The opponents have fumbled 4 times and lost 2. They're converting 34% on third downs and 50% on fourth downs. Alabama State has 7 sacks on the season, and they've given up 7 sacks. Right now, they have a 3-headed monster at running back, Merritt, Dunn, and Howell. I would love to see Santo Dunn get more carries, but right now, Ja'Cory Merritt is the leading rusher with 32 carries for 87 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. Dunn, 14 carries, 84 yards, 6 yards per carry. Howell, 18 carries, 668 yards, 3.8 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. So they're spreading the carries out amongst those guys, but I would love to see Dunn be the guy. Miles Crowley right now is the leading passer, 26 of 46, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Demetrius Davis, 17 of 24, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 198 yards. He had been banged up and missed pretty much all of the Miles game except for a couple plays and the entire UCLA game. So if he's healthy, then I think he can be a difference maker with his legs in this game. They're going to have to find a way to attack that Prairie View defense. And if you got a quarterback, they can kind of spread them out with their run game and then hit those guys downfield. You can probably make some plays. You got solid receivers. Isaiah Scott has 8 catches for 169 yards. He's averaging 21 yards per catch and a touchdown. Levante Chenault 8 catches, 139 yards, 17 yards per catch. Darius Edmonds, 5 catches, 113 yards, 22 yards per catch. And that's not even counting a guy like Jeremiah Hickson, who can still make some things happen as well. So they have some guys that can, if they can get loose, Prairie View's defense can have some problems. Uh, Bubba Adams right now is the leading tackler. He has 18 tackles on the season. It's really good to see him healthy right now. Adrian Maddox, 17 tackles. Maddox has 3.5 tackles for loss. Right now, Brandon Gaddy leads the team with 4 tackles for loss. And Stephon Young-Roll leads the team with three sacks. Maddox has 2 interceptions on the season to lead the Hornets. Grace is the punter, 39.5 yards per punt. Nathaniel Eschner, he's 1 for 1 on field goals. He kicked a 29-yarder return game right now. McMinn, you can expect him to get loose. He's one of the top punt return guys. He hasn't really broke out yet, but he's a guy that I would definitely keep my eyes out on in a game like this. Special teams can be a game changer in a game like this. You got a guy who can break a punt return or a kickoff return that can really change field position and that can help you in a game like this. So I would definitely keep my eyes on a guy like McMinn, because I think that at some point he's gonna bust one, and for the Hornets' sake, you probably want him to bust one in this game. So we'll see what happens with that. But like I said, this game I'm pretty excited for it. Like I said, I picked this as my game of the week. But I like Prairie View. I think they're gonna win this game 24-16. Right now, I think their defense is enough to get them through this game, and their run game has been very, very solid. The passing game still makes me a little nervous, but right now I think that that their offense can kind of make their way through until that gets going. The next game we have is Alabama A&M at Florida A&M. 2 teams who FAMU was kind of looked at as a team who would be a East Division contender, but a lot of they're 1-2, which is probably where they probably would have been for most people's predictions anyway. I think that the thing is that they have not looked really good in any of these games. They had a good first half against North Carolina. They didn't look good at all against Jackson State, and they were in a dogfight against Albany State, which is Albany State's a very tough team, and they were in a dogfight in that game. They have to find an identity. Their running game has not been there. They're averaging 85 yards per game on the ground, 2.7 yards per carry. They're getting gashed on the ground, 202 on the ground as a defense, 5.4 yards per carry. They're allowing 42 points per game. They're scoring 16. They're passing the ball for 210 per game. They have 4 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 57 of 102 passing the opponents, 256 through the air, 67 of 97, 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Just not been able to get any stops on defense. 458 yards for the opponents per game, 6.6 yards per play. The Rattlers, 295 yards per game, 4.5 yards per play. Right now, FAMU's converting 30% on third downs and 57% on fourth downs. The opponents, 48% on fourth downs and 50% on third. 3 fumbles for the Rattlers, lost, and 4 fumbles. The opponents have fumbled 3 times, haven't lost any. FAMU has 2 sacks and they've allowed 10. The pass rush just has not been there. Obviously, with guys missing games and things like that, I don't think this team has really been able to get in any rhythm. Right now, they just are kind of like a rudderless ship at this point. DeAndre Francis leads the team with 19 carries for 79 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 1 touchdown. Terrell Jennings, 18 carries, 69 yards, 3.8 yards per carry. Jeremy Musa, 55 of 94, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 611 yards. He's completing 58% of his passes. Xavier Smith is the guy. They are not targeting anybody else right now but him. He has 22 catches for 222 yards, 10 yards per catch, and 1 touchdown. Darian Oxendine is the next guy with 6 catches for 78 yards. So Smith has been getting the ball a lot. He's a good security blanket, and they're definitely taking advantage of that. Isaiah Major leads the team with 20 tackles. Fagan, 18. Cheney, 16. Tackles for loss. Major, 1.5. Ash, 1.5. Mentor, 1.5. Sacks. Major and Land each have 1 sack apiece. Interceptions by Williams and Stevens. I like the special teams unit. Fadul is averaging 46 yards per punt. He has a 56-yarder on the season. He has 7 50-plus yards punts and 4 punts inside the 20. So he's definitely a weapon. Romo Martinez is 5 of 5 on field goals. His long on the season is 43. So, he can be definitely counted on. The return game, you have the guys like Smith and Shareed who can, as I said about a few other guys, who can really break one, but it just hasn't happened at this point yet. But I would not sleep on this special teams unit at all. I think right now that's the most stable unit on this Florida A&M team, and that's not an insult to say that. Right now the offense isn't really getting it done right now. I mean, this is a game that it could happen. They could have a good game here. Alabama A&M right now is averaging 6 points per game. They're giving up 41. They're running the ball for 83 yards per game, 2.2 yards per carry, 168 on the ground for the opponents, 4.8 yards per carry, 208 yards through the air for Alabama A&M. No touchdowns yet, 7 interceptions. So they have yet to get that passing game going. The opponents, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 270 yards per game. Total offense, Alabama A&M, 291 yards per game, 3.8 yards per play, 6.6 yards per play for the opponents, 438 yards per game. Alabama A&M's converting 27% on third downs and 33% on fourth downs. Just not been able to move the football. They fumbled 3 times and lost 2. They have 4 sacks on the season. They've given up 12 sacks. The opponents have converted 44% on third downs and 50% on fourth downs, and they fumbled twice and lost both fumbles. Right now, like I said, my biggest issue for Alabama A&M has been in this offense. The guys who you thought would be getting it done right now have yet to really flourish. You got a guy like Garrett Quarles, who is one of the top backs in the league. Right now, he's sitting at 127 yards, 2.6 yards per carry, and 1 touchdown. Xavier Langford right now is probably your starting quarterback, at least from production. He has 27 completions, 55 attempts, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's completing 49% of his passes, 302 yards. Quincy Casey, 11 of 28, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 140 yards. Isaiah Cox right now leads the team with 9 catches for 192 yards, averaging 21.3 yards per catch. You really would look for a guy like Ibrahim to start to break out if they can get the ball to him. That's your top receiver. I think you really need to make sure he gets touches. He hasn't really been getting touches. Douglas right now leads the team with 13 tackles. Hester, 12 tackles. Rice, 12 tackles. Tackles for loss. Hayes leads the team with 4 sacks. Douglas leads the team with 2. And interceptions by Rice, Douglas, and Eberhard. The special teams have been kind of up and down. Linvey leads the team at 36.5 yards per punt, has long of 47. Alvarez is 1 for 1 on field goals. He kicked a 47-yarder, so that's a good leg. Barbosa is 1 of 2 on field goals. His long is 30. He's 1 for 1 from 30 to 39 yards and 0 for 1 from 40 plus. Return game right now. Nobody really has really had any big returns for the Bulldogs yet. This game is a game where I think that the winning team is, again, this is a lot like the Grambling game, a lot like the Prairie View game. Teams are still not consistent offensively yet, and it's early, so you're gonna have those issues with teams. But neither one of these teams is really playing great football yet. But FAMU being at home, and I think they have a guy like Jeremy Musa at quarterback who can make those things happen. And you have your weapons on offense, and that defense is gonna start to come around. I like FAMU in this game by a score of 28-13. I just think playing at home is definitely the key for Florida A&M. I like where they're at right now. I think they can get themselves on track. Had a rough start to the season, but you can get yourself on track, and this game could be the game to kind of boost you to where you need to go. So that's our FAMU Alabama A&M preview. Last game on the schedule is Arkansas Pine Bluff at Alcorn. Pine Bluff's a team who has been all over the place in terms of competition. They played a D2 team. They played a team in North American who I'm assuming they're NAIA. And then they had an FBS matchup against Oklahoma State. So we don't know at all where this team is at all. Similar to Southern last week, no FCS games yet. First FCS game is in conference. They're 2-1, so they did take care of the business that they needed to. Didn't look great against Lane. That's kind of concerning. Right now, they're averaging 43 points per game. They're giving up 36. They're running the ball for 192 yards per game, 5 yards per carry, 164 yards per game for the opponents, 4.8 yards per carry, 238 through the air for the Golden Lions, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. Opponents, 243 through the air, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Total offense, 408 for the opponents, 6.5 yards per play, 6.2 yards per play for the Golden Lions, 431 yards per game. Third down conversion, UAPB 36%. The opponents 30% on third downs, 66% on fourth downs for UAPB, 0% for the opponents. Pine Bluff has fumbled 3 times and lost 1. Opponents fumbled twice and lost both of them. Pine Bluff has 8 sacks. The opponents have 7. Individually, right now, Kayvon Britton is the leading rusher. He has 45 carries for 277 yards and 4 touchdowns, averaging 6.2 yards per carry. Jalen Macon is averaging 6.8 yards per carry. He has 54 yards on 8 carries. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Skylar Perry, 37 of 65, 56% completion rate, 504 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. You would love to see him start to get back into that form he had in the spring. Really need to put that rough 2021 season behind him. Raekwon Prince is their leading receiver. He's the only guy with double-digit catches with 12, 174 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So he's definitely their go-to guy right now. Isaac Peppers leads the defense with 16 tackles. Sincere Jones, 15. Ryland Woods, 13. Timon Akins, 11. Monroe Beard, 11. Clark, 3 tackles for loss. Ward, 2.5. Peppers, 1.5. Riley, 1.5. Gray, 1.5. Lukeman, 1.5. Smith, 1.5. Tackles, sacks. Clark, 2.5. Interceptions go to Seward, Knox, and Newman. Special teams, Josh Sanchez averages 47 yards per punt right now. Has a 68-yarder. So that's definitely a field flipper right there. 8 punts inside the 20, 55, 50-plus yard punts. They have blocked a punt this season, so that's always something to keep an eye on. Christopher Thompson is 4 or 5 on field goals. He's 3 for 3 from 20 to 29 yards, 102 from 30 to 39 yards. His longest 37. Has not attempted a 40-yard plus kick yet. Return game, Maurice Lloyd is averaging 40 yards per return. So on kick returns, he has 5 returns for 202 yards. So and a touchdown. So he has 85-yard return. So that's definitely a guy you want to keep your eyes out on. If you're Alcorn, you want to make sure you know where he is at all times in your kicking game. Alcorn's coming off of a big victory against McNeese. They were able to close this game out. They weren't able to close out the Stephen F. Austin game. It came back to bite them, but they were able to close this game out, and they're sitting at 1-2, 19 points per game. Opponents 34. Rushing Alcorn 183 yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry. The opponents 130 yards per game, 3.2 yards per carry. 132 yards per game passing for Alcorn, 32 of 67, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. 295 through the air for the opponents, 59 of 94, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Total offense, 320 yards for the Braves, 5.1 yards per play, 5.9 yards per play for the opponents, 426 yards. 26% on third downs for Alcorn. That's definitely something they're going to have to improve. 100% on fourth down, 2 or 2. They fumbled once this season and lost it. They have 12 sacks. 10 of those came against McNeese. Just an amazing defensive performance right there. 19 of 43 for the opponents on third down, 44%. 60% on fourth down, 3 of 5. And opponents have 5 sacks on the season. So offensive line has been protecting better. Defensive line and the front seven as a whole have been really making some plays. Jarvion Howard leads the team with 49 carries for 281 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 5.7 yards per carry. Nico Duffy, 32 carries, 153 yards, 4.8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. Aaron Allen, 30 of 63, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 363 yards. Right now, he's completing 47% of his passes. That's got to improve. Malik Rogers, 7 catches for 121 yards, 1 touchdown. Montario Hunt has an 89-yard touchdown. That's his only catch. CJ Bolar, 7 catches, 65 yards. Warren Anthony, 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. So this receiving core has to help the quarterback out. Quarterback has to make good throws for the receivers. If the passing game can get going with the way that running game is going, Alcorn's going to be a dangerous team. Terrence Ellis leads the team with 24 tackles. James, 19. Kinsler, 15. Cherilus, 12. Tackles for loss. Ellis, 4. James and Cherilus, 3.5. Bailey, 3. Ellis leads the team with 2.5 sacks. Bailey, 2. Dawson, 2. Ballard, 2. Interceptions, McCullum and Woods each have 1 interception apiece. Kicking, Noah Kiani is averaging 32 yards per punt. Kiani is also 5 or 6 on field goals, 4 for 4 inside 20 to 29 yards, 1 of 1 from 30 to 39 yards, and he missed a 40-plus yarder. His long on the season is 38. The return game, right now, nobody's really standing out. They only have 3. They only have 4 kickoff returns and no punt returns, so nothing there to speak on yet. This game pretty much, to me, is going to be determined by Alcorn. How Alcorn plays determines how this game plays. If Alcorn comes out and take care of business with the running game, because Pine Bluff can be ran on. This is Pine Bluff's first non-FBS, non-subdivision game. I think Alcorn playing at home, they win this game. The running game definitely gets them through it. The passing game hits some big plays. The defense stifles Pine Bluff. Alcorn win this game 31-12. And that's gonna do it for our show. Like I said, tomorrow on SWAC Smoke, we got Jamie G from No Slack in the SWAC podcast coming through. So make sure y'all check that out. Of course, Sunday, we're gonna recap all these games, and then next week we get ready for week 5. So we're in the last week of September. Hey, it's go time, man. We got 5 SWAC games. Let's see what happens. I'm your boy C Wells signing out. You guys have a good hump day, and we'll catch y'all tomorrow on SWAC Smoke. We out of here. Peace.